today is your lucky day because today you are going to learn how to scare that narcissist away. I hate bullies, don't you? Because I was bullied as a kid and then I dealt with narcissists, and I keep narcissists away because I don't want them in my space. The place you really want to get to, by the way, is what I always say is like Glinda the Good Witch. Glinda the Good Witch, who at the beginning of The Wizard of Oz, when the Wicked Witch came flying around her, she was like, go away. You have no power here. Skidaloo, moving along. And you know what? That Wicked Witch was like, get away from her, right? That's what you want. That's where you're heading. That's what you want to get to. You want to be like that, so powerful that they're like a gnat flying around. How do you get to that place? And I can tell you that the way you get to that place, you want to be in your authentic power. Now, how do you get there? By understanding who you are authentically, by knowing that you have that power. What do? They blur boundaries, right? So the first thing you got to do is you got to set boundaries. You got to have that power move. I always say step 1, don't run. Step 2, make a U-turn. Step 3, break free. So you're turning a ship around. You are 180 degrees because the first thing they do is blur boundaries. They're coming in with that love bombing. Whether it's a professional relationship or a personal relationship, they're coming in. And even when you try to say, oh, let's slow down. Why should we slow down? It's all going great. The minute you try to set boundaries, they're in there. They don't want you to have boundaries. They thrive on blurring boundaries and trampling over your sense of self. The minute you try to say, no, this isn't working for me, I can't breathe, let's slow down. Why slow down? It's all going great. We're all here. Let's do it now. They don't want you to be able to breathe. They don't want you to be able to think. The key to starting to scare them away is to start setting those rock solid boundaries and saying, listen, I deserve respect here. And I'm standing up for myself and enforcing those boundaries with unwavering resolve. And that means, period, end of story, no matter what the boundary is, period. So if you say, I need this by Thursday at noon, then 12:01 comes and it's like, where is it? You've got to be that to the letter. Because the minute you let something slide, that's when they start to go, well, I'm getting away with this, right? And it's the same thing. If you are in a court case with them, they pride themselves on looking for places to slip and slide all over the place. They'll give you everything as far as bank statements in discovery except for page 12. They love to just irritate you. That's what they'll do. They'll look for ways to undermine you. They'll look for ways to be passive aggressive. And you've got to not allow them to undermine you. If they try to steal your ideas, you can say that was my idea, or this was a product of collaboration. If you're at work, if somebody is crossing your boundaries at work, I value collaboration, but I won't tolerate disrespect. I mean, you can say things in a way that is assertive but not aggressive. It's always okay to assert yourself and just say, I want to be respected. Narcissists respect people who respect themselves, and they don't go near people who respect themselves. These are the people that they don't go looking to go around. That's a way to scare a narcissist away. They prey upon the people who have vulnerabilities. That's who they look for. They look for the people who they can manipulate, who they have those places that are open. So, if you're dealing with a family member who constantly crosses boundaries, you can assertively communicate to them by saying, I understand your concerns, but I need my personal space. But let's focus on finding common ground. If you are getting ready to negotiate with a narcissist, please get my free Crush My Negotiation Prep Worksheet at winmynegotiation.com. It's 15 pages. It has helped so many people win their negotiations. So make sure you get that, winmynegotiation.com. Next thing you can do is mirror their behavior. This is how you turn the tables, okay? Narcissists feed off of energy from people around them, especially when they're assertive and confident. So if you can make sure that you aren't mouthy, stand up to them. They're more afraid of you than you are of them. If you refuse to engage in manipulative games and just say, I can see that you're upset, but I'm not going to engage in this right now. We can continue this conversation when you've calmed down. Not allowing, you can respond, don't react. Observe, don't absorb. If they try to bait you, if they try to trigger you, they go fishing and they reel you in, and then they go, "Ooh, I got a live one." And then there you are. You're in it. Don't allow them to do that. Just say no. Put that in the comments. Just say no. All right. And then join my free private Facebook group while you're at it. Okay. Narcissist Negotiators with Rebecca Zung. Put it in the comments below. Practice self-care. You can get the good people around you that you need to have around you. When you're dealing with narcissists, self-care isn't a luxury. It's a necessity. You need to nourish your mind, your body, your soul. That's why you put that invisible bubble down around you. I have a guy who works on my team, and his name is Tom, and he calls himself Teflon Tom. I love that. So good. It's a great way for you to remember Teflon down around you. Mindfulness, journaling, anything that's going to bring you joy and raise your vibrational energy. So important. Join online communities like mine. That's why I started my high conflict negotiation certification, because I wanted people to have access to great communities. Reach out to family members, friends. Get the support that you need. You want to be treated with dignity. You want to be treated with respect. You want all of your interactions to be here, because then what happens is they're no longer getting supply from you. And when they're no longer getting supply from you, then they're not going to come back for you anymore. That's when they're going to just ease on down the road. And that's the true way to scare that narcissist away. And obviously, when you're negotiating with them, you have to be involved. But when you go to build leverage, the whole point of it is to build leverage so that you are sucking away that form of supply. You're just basically taking away that energy source, that supply source that they're getting from you. That's what you want to do. You want to just like you're sucking energy out of the room for them, because then they'll just go get it from somewhere else. That's what you want to do. In the process, you're bringing back your own energy to yourself and authentic power to yourself. I want to just briefly talk about your 5Ds, because I think that these are so good.
Yeah. Yep. So it's the 5Ds in a relationship, but it's not, these 5Ds can apply to any relationship. Yeah. It can apply to a work relationship.
Yeah.
And the first one is distort.
So these are the 5Ds that are negative forces in a relationship.
Yep. So distort. That D, what does it do? It tells lies. It plants negative thoughts in you, right? It makes you think negative things. So the thing that I always say, and so let's apply it to your relationship. You could think, oh, he doesn't love me anymore. He doesn't think I'm pretty. Well, that's distortion, right? Those are lies. It's the lies that you're just listening to negative lies. And so speak truth to the lies, right? The minute you start hearing those kind of things coming in, speak truth. Just, you know, I literally, the minute I do that, sometimes I even verbally go, stop. And I'll say something positive to myself, or I'll think a positive thought. Does that make sense? So you've got to,
we are meaning making machines, right?
Yeah.
We make things mean things that don't mean that.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, so yeah, that's a big one. So distortion in a relationship, in any relationship, is not good. And the next one is discourage. Okay. So your distortions can turn into discouragement. Oh, I'm not good enough for him. Like, you know, so you start to play this thing in your mind. I'm not worthy. So no, then you need to turn it around, encourage yourself, you know, again, encourage your partner. So it may be that it's your partner. Like I said, he wanted to come in. I wanted to cut him down and discourage him, but instead I encouraged him. So you've got to turn that one around. So first D is distort, second D is discourage, and the third one is doubt, right? So lies and discouragement lead to doubt yourself, to doubt God's plan for you, you know, to doubt your direction, to doubt the love that your partner might have for you. So the way to counter doubt is through trust. So when John had shared with me that he, had done this infidelity, at that point, I can continue to doubt. The minute he was going out, I could have doubted him. But for me, I knew that I had to trust. Now, when I say that, I'm not saying trust without something to back it up. They need to give you something to trust, right? But just make sure it's not things you're kind of just, coming up with in your own head. And the fourth D is distract. And this is such a big one because think about it. If you are busy or your partner's busy, say you're busy doing all the things that you need to do to take care of your household or take care of the kids or make money, and you're feeling, kind of unappreciated. And all of a sudden, somebody kind of comes into your life that tells you how wonderful you are, how, it's a distraction. Or, a lot of times for men, and women, it can be pornography. It can be pornography, something that distracts you and just seems shiny and bright, and distraction from your relationship. You need to be careful of that because, that there's that whole saying, if the devil doesn't make you busy, and you're right. If the devil doesn't make you bad, he'll make you busy. So it's a distraction. Mm-hmm. And then the fifth one is divide. And that divide, if it's in a relationship or in a marriage, I should say, the divide means divorce. And so you have to guard yourself against those 5 Ds. And so it's about counteracting each one of them. And the divide, again, if you two are connected as a couple, you can really negate a lot of that. It's when you're not united. Again, it's when you're doing the I and not the we. So those are the 5 Ds.
Right. And again, we stress, obviously, if you are in an abusive relationship, if you are in a situation where your partner is a narcissist.
Right.
And not willing to change and being verbally or emotionally abusive to you, then clearly and not willing to be a we.
Right. And in that case, then you need to walk away from the relationship. And I'm not one to say, leave the relationship, but there are deal breakers. And exactly what you just named, those are deal breakers. If they're not willing to change, if they're not willing to look at themselves, if they're not willing to be honest, right? That's huge. Here's an example. And it can be, you come up with your own guidelines, but say your partner has cheated on you or has shown that they've been distracted. Maybe for trust, for building trust, you can look at their phone. Now, some people might think that's a violation, but you know what? If that's something that you two negotiate and say, you know what, it just would make me feel better until I can trust you. One of the things that John did do, I got to tell you, I persecuted him, and rightly so. I mean, I was so hurt and I felt very, very deceived, right? So when John really, he was working towards being in the relationship and being a good partner, I was allowed to look at his phone whenever I wanted to, and I, hand it over. And now some people might feel like, oh, well, that's that in itself. For me, it was very important. It was very important for me to look and see what was going on because I needed to build that trust. So, your partner has to be willing to do, and, you have to negotiate those together.
Yeah.
Depending on what they are.
And so what does that mean for you? And one of the things that I like is that you have this list of things like what is, a perfect partner for you. And I think that that's an important thing for people. Okay, if they're not going to stay in this relationship, what does that look like going forward? And in some ways it's sort of a manifestation exercise.
Yeah. I always say I did my best relationship work when I was not in a relationship. So, I mean, I dated some real winners before I met John. And wow, I dated an incredible narcissist. He was a piece of work, but I mean, he brought me to my knees. I mean, there was a lot of pain and a lot of crying, but I was able to work on myself a lot. And I think that's why when John started exhibiting these behaviors, I didn't cave and I didn't fold and I didn't go down, because I saw it for what it was. And I had done enough work on myself where I'm like, hey, that's not okay. This behavior is not okay. And I'm having to teach my daughter that, she actually got into a relationship with a narcissist. And I watched as he started to look better and do better. The more she kept feeding into him, this guy ended up it was amazing to see the transformation in him. And it was sickening to see the transformation in my daughter. She absolutely did not look like herself. She didn't act like herself. It was a really sad thing. It was almost like he sucked the lifeblood out of her, So
oh, yeah, I saw it in my daughter as well.
Yeah. So you have to be careful of that. So you should always be working on yourself. And yeah, listen, make a list of what's important to you in a relationship and pay attention. Some of this is really basic, right? But we forget because we get so taken back by maybe the good looks or the charisma. It's the same thing that I tell my kids, when they were going to school. I used to say, if you are in a group of people or you're with somebody and you walk away and you don't feel good, they're not your people. They're not your people. So you always have to pay attention to that. Yeah. So it's very important to do the work on yourself when you're not in a relationship.
Yeah. One of my favorite things to say is stop trying to make not your people, your people.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, and so you have the 4 C's, which I love for, if you don't have it in your current relationship, then I think it's totally a deal breaker. And, this is something that you definitely want in your next relationship. So talk about that. And I think that that's like a good way for us to wrap up.
Okay. So the first of the 4 C's is communicate. I said it I've said it a couple times in this interview. I'm going to say it again. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Where there's a void in negativity, where there's a void in communication, negativity will fill it. So I always like to encourage couples to find a time that works for you. So I knew with my husband, right when he was walking in the door, was not a good time to try to communicate with him. So find your sweet spot. And I've had to find that with my kids. What's the best time to talk to them where they really open up to me? So communicate. One of the things you can do as a couple, ask your spouse or ask your partner, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do I communicate? And what would make it a 10? Right? That's an easy one. So the next C is connect. And you have to communicate to connect. And again, that sounds like an obvious one, but think about it. When you get really busy with work and with kids and, maybe starting a new business, whatever it is, you don't take as much time to connect. So try to find a time that works for you all to connect. Now, one of the things that I did with my husband is we would take a walk. And I got to tell you, sometimes these walks, we would fight. But by the end of the walk, we ended up working out a lot. So sometimes it's just about that movement and the talking that we were able to talk a lot. And one of the things that I highly recommend that people do with their family is a family meeting. Once a week, we would get together with our children and sit around the table. And I'm going to tell you something, it was not easy. There were times we'd go family, or John would say family meeting, or maybe I would start it depending. And, the eyes would roll and everybody had to put their phones down. But Rebecca, I'm going to tell you something. It was fascinating to me. John or I would bring something to the table to read. A lot of times it might be maybe scripture or an article that somebody had written. And it never failed that something one of us was going through, we wouldn't know the kids were experiencing. This article would just open up the channels for us to have a conversation. And it made our family dynamic and our connection with each other so strong. We became such a stronger family. The only regret that I have about family meetings is I didn't start soon enough. So even if it's just you and your spouse or your mate, do it. So that's communicate, connect. And the next one is commit. Commit to your relationship. Commit to work on it. Commit to, and it could be little things. So, there's been a study that the strongest relationships are when each of the partners take time to listen to their spouse or help them with something. And I'm talking little things. So John might be writing an article and he might call me into his office and say, hey, can you just read this real quick? And I'm going to tell you something. Last thing I want to do is sit down at that moment and read through his article. But I know it's important to him. And so I'll take that 5 minutes to sit and read the article and give my input. So it's committing to the relationship. It might mean going to a company party with your spouse when you really have no desire to hang out with the work, the work people. So commit to your relationship. And then the last one is care. Show you care. Isn't it funny how a lot of times in relationship, our spouse is like the last one we give the love to. And we kind of talked about that in the 5 Ds too, but showing that you care about them, that you care about the relationship. So, and that's the whole it's we, not me. So right. Those are the 4 C's: communicate, connect, commit, and care. And those apply to not just intimate relationships. Again, can apply to work relationships, any of that.
Friendships.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Narcissistic phrases that contradict their behavior. Say one thing, do another. It's like, do as I say, not as I do, right? A lot of lip service. And the thing is, They're very, very charming. They come on very strong, very charming, very charismatic. It's very easy for them to make it look like they're saying the right thing, doing the right thing. Oh my gosh, yes, right. They completely know how to persuade, excellent at persuading people to do things that they want them to do. And they can get people to do these things for years and years and years, but it contradicts their behavior. And it can really cause cognitive dissonance in people. And so when you're going to negotiate with them or deal with them or live with them, especially if it's for long periods of time, it can be quite confusing. It can cause you to be off balance. It can cause you to be off kilter, which is exactly what they want. They want you to be under their control. And that's why it's really important to be able to spot this, so that you can almost start seeing it as a third party and go, oh, okay, I see what's happening here, and not be so taken in by it. You can almost start looking at it as if you're an observer and not be under that spell. All right. So the first one is they'll say, I don't want to argue with you. I don't want to argue with you. But meanwhile, they're constantly arguing with you. I'll give you an example. You just say the most benign of things, and they'll be interrupting you. They'll say, why are you bringing that up now? They'll say, you're yelling when you're not yelling. They will not give you information that you simply asked for. They give you a hard time when you want to do the most simple of things. You ask about going to a restaurant and they say, I don't care, and everything is difficult, but yet they say, I don't want to argue. I don't want to argue. Or it's in the same vein, they'll say, I'm not mad. I'm not mad. You can tell that they're mad. You can tell that they're angry. You can tell that there's rage underneath the surface, but yet I'm not mad. And it's so confusing and frustrating because they're raging on you, but they're not mad. That's one. Another one is, I love you, but yet a lot of their behavior is not congruent with a person who loves another person. A person who loves another person would not degrade a person, would not put another person down. We care about a person if they're sick, for example. When a person is sick, they want to take care of them. They want to be there for them. They don't act callous toward them. But then they say, I love you. When a person is going through something, they don't make sure that they're as horrible as possible. But this is what they do. And then they say, I love you. They say things like, if you're not even on a diet or something, you'll be at a party and they'll say, oh, so-and-so's not going to have any, she's on a diet, even if you're not on a diet, because they want you to lose weight or whatever. Oh, I love you. Things like that. That's not loving. Or they'll say something that's super mean and those, it's just joking. That sort of thing. It's not, that totally contradicts behavior. The next one is, I'm your biggest supporter. I'm your biggest fan. But yet they don't come to things that you're doing. They make sure to interrupt big meetings that you might be having at work. They aren't happy for you when you get promoted, or they'll say you didn't really do anything to get promoted, or that wasn't that great of a thing, or, they kind of put you down, they poo-poo it in some way. But, I'm your biggest fan. I am the one who supports you the most. But yet, what you're doing isn't all that great, but I'm your biggest fan. Totally contradicts the way they act. Very confusing, very confusing. The next one is, you're my best friend. And you're thinking, how could I be your best friend when you treat me the way that you treat me? How would one be as a best friend when you're degrading this other person, when you're telling this person that you don't want to be in a relationship every other day? I could take you or leave you. Every other day is something else, but you're my best friend. But then the next day is, I don't trust you, that sort of thing. But, you're my best friend. It's so hot and cold. It's so all over the place, but you're my best friend. That's, crazy stuff. They're like so all over the place. You're my best friend. The next one is, it's because I care about you. They'll say something or do something like, I gave you this piece of exercise equipment because you need to lose weight. And it's because I care about you. They do something that's degrading, definitely humiliating, and it's just because I care about you. I have a cousin who her husband gave her this abdominizer. I'm sure it's definitely not on the market anymore, but it was like some kind of, she was like tiny at the time. I mean, teeny, and he was a massive, huge narcissist. And he gave her that for her 30th birthday. And that was, her only gift. That was the only thing he gave her. It was because he cared about her. So that's the kind of thing I mean. Like, it's because I care about you. That's the next one. The next one is, things have never been that bad. They'll rage on you. They will go insane. One day it's the worst thing in the world. The relationship is in the toilet. They're recording you. I need to record this conversation because you lie all the time, because you're delusional, because you're a narcissist, this, that, and the other thing. And then the next day, I don't know what you're talking about. Things have never been that bad between us. The relationship has never been that bad. It's like they don't remember because of the way their brain works. They shift from one to the next. They literally have a form of amnesia. That's the super confusing part, because the way when they treat you in a certain way and you're still like in massive PTSD about the way they've treated you. They literally do not remember. And that's why they don't have any empathy about it, because they just don't remember. The next one is, you need help. And they'll say these things like, they genuinely think like they're helping you or something. It contradicts all other types of their behavior. You need, because of your mental problems, right? And they genuinely think that they're like caring for you. It's so contradictory. This stuff is not okay. I just want you to know that when you're living in this high and low all the time, it really can cause this trauma bond. It makes it much harder to leave. It's just not okay. I want you to put that in the comments. I want you to start thinking about it. And I want you to start recognizing that. It's not okay. Not okay. And if you guys have seen this, I want you to tell me that you've seen it. And I want you to tell me the kinds of things that you've seen. Put that in the comments. I'd love to know the kinds of things that you guys have seen too.
Let's talk about the 2 secrets narcissists don't want you to know. So they have 2 selves. Let me explain something. Narcissists were created out of trauma. They were not born that way. It's not a DNA thing. It's not like they come into the world this way. We come into the world feeling whole. We come into the world feeling like pretty good. Like, I think I'm a pretty good human. I think I'm a good person. I mean, we feel good inside. It's when things start happening to us that we start reacting to the world and feeling like, oh, maybe I'm not so great. Maybe there is something wrong with me. And that happens to all of us, by the way. We all have traumas and triggers and insecurities and feelings of doubt. None of us are immune from that. I wish we were. Certainly, I'm not. Those of us who are out there that say we're not, those are the narcissists, by the way. All of us have our moments of that. But what happens is with narcissists is that during their childhood, they were exposed to trauma on a regular basis. Something happened to them that caused them to constantly be in survival mode on a regular basis, that constantly caused them to feel like they were having to be in that fight or flight, feeling. And when you're in fight or flight, our brains emit chemicals. Our brains emit, epinephrine, things like that, that cause us to be able to be stronger, faster, better, so that we can fight or fly, right? So that's where the fight or flight comes from. And when we're children, and this happens on a regular basis, causes the brain to actually have arrested development in the limbic system part of our brain. And then what happens as you get older is that part of the brain then doesn't develop properly. So then the prefrontal cortex part of the brain, other parts of the brain, of course, we grow up and the logic part of the brain is, there. But what happens is, with narcissists, when they are presented with certain stimuli, which makes them feel like they need to survive, or they feel like where they're again being put in situations which are similar to those situations that made them feel defensive or made them feel like they were, potentially in danger, then that narcissistic injury gets triggered. So, when does that happen to them? Well, it could be any kind of situation, but a lot of times it's when they feel exposed, it's when they feel somebody has, slighted them in some way, somebody has, outed them or, caused them to feel less in a situation or whatever it is, then that narcissistic injury gets triggered, that narcissistic rage comes flying out, that limbic system of the brain gets activated, and here comes that cage. It's almost like a caged animal. It's almost like that part of them, that survival part of them, comes out, and they literally cannot help themselves, and they see black and white. It's like that other part of their brain is shut off, and they only see that at that moment. They cannot see the good anymore. They only see the bad. And, so there they are. But the two secrets they don't want you to know are that they have these two selves. What happened when all of this was taking place as children is they almost split into two. They have this true self, which was the scared little self that they hide away, which is almost like a shriveled little, version of themselves that's hidden, it's weak. And then there's the false self, the one that they show the world. And yeah, we all sort of have this somewhat of a dichotomy like that, but they really have a dichotomy. For them, it's a very much of a dichotomy. So those are the two secrets. They've got this true self and then the false self that they show the world, and that true self is never to be seen by anyone ever. And that false self is the one that they must protect at any cost. And, that's why they do not ever want to be exposed. That's why they must layer on that narcissistic supply from external sources by adulation, having the prestigious friends, the prestigious houses, the money, the power, the control. All of those things have to come from external sources, but they feel totally and completely empty inside. And it's that black hole that can never be filled. And they feel like they're desperate for air, starving inside, because they just feel like they can never fill that black hole that's inside of them, that true self that they're hiding away, that scared little self. And that's why I say to you all the time that they're way more afraid of you than you are of them, because that true self that's inside of them is super scared. The problem is that everything they do is transactional. Everything they do is a manipulation. Everything they do comes from that place of fear, comes from that place of manipulation, comes from that place of scared self, that survival self. So really, that's secret number 2, is that everything they do is a manipulation. Everything they do is transactional, because they feel like they have to come from that place. They're in survival mode all the time. And they think that you are too. That's the sad thing. They don't really trust that anyone else comes from any place other than that place. They don't trust anyone. They really do believe that everyone has an agenda, that everyone wants something from them, that no one is truly good, so they don't mind taking from other people, because they really think that everyone's out for their chips too, that it's a dog eat dog world. They think that it's like that. And it's very sad. If you agree with me, it's so sad. Just put "so sad" in the comments, because it is so sad. But that doesn't mean that you have to be in that space. You can't fix it. You can't heal it. When you go to help them, they're just going to drag you into that quicksand with them. It's not going to help. It's not going to help. You're going to just drown. You're just going to drown along with them. So what you need to do is move on. So let's talk about that one thing that the narcissist never wants you to know. Okay. So think about it. They live their lives. Almost everything they do is a lie, right? I mean, they were born and they were fine. And from what I understand, it's definitely a nurture thing, not a nature. Yes, not a nature thing, a nurture thing. And that means that something happened to them when they were children that caused them to be injured in some way, and they started to see the world as a very scary place, and their scarcity mentality to the absolute extreme. They feel like it's like dog eat dog, like I have to survive, and the only way I can survive is by lying and manipulating and getting things like, and that's why they end up lying about stuff that they don't even need to lie about, and manipulating things when they don't even need to be manipulating. But it's just because that's their way of being. That's how they were born. And so they were traumatized. They felt like they needed to survive. And so they have this like this little inner self that's super fragile, that has no sense of self-worth. And they just layer on everything on the outside world to make you think, or make the whole world think, that they're this persona when they're actually this persona. And they're almost like two different versions of themselves. People who are fully self-present, fully self-aware, fully feeling whole and complete don't feel like they're different people when they are between, being at home, watching TV, having dinner with their family, or whatever it is that they're doing behind closed doors. versus the person that is shown to the world, that goes out, that works in the workplace, that talks to people. With narcissists, it's almost two different personas as to what they show. And even there's another even layer, even beyond what's at home, which is what they never want anyone to know, which is that deep thing that's going on inside of them. So I mean, there's a lot of secrets that they have, and there are a lot of things that they don't want you to know. I mean, what they want you to think is that they're better than everyone else, that they're smarter than everyone else, that they're a winner. And that's why they act the way they do. That's why they put people down all the time. That's why they're super jealous. They act very, very entitled. They use people. But all of that is because that's how they feel like they have to show up and be in the world. And so to maintain the facade of that they're better than everyone else and smarter than everyone else and have more money or have a nicer house or whatever it is that they're trying to project out into the world, they'll do whatever they can to protect that. And especially things that, how they look in the world. And that's why when you're negotiating with them, you have to be very, very aware that this is what's happening with them, because they will protect that at any cost. At the very least, put people down and, engage in control tactics, and, they're jealous and they have no boundaries and all that. But, when it comes to negotiating, you're either for them or against them. And if you're going to be against them, then you're going to be public enemy number one. And they have to see things in black and white. That's what's going on during the negotiations. They're constantly trying to test people a lot of times too. And if you want to know more about that, you should definitely check out my video on how narcissists test victims. And if you have seen this and you know that I'm right so far, give me a for sure in the comments. All right, so you ready for the big, big secret, the one that they definitely do not want you to know? And that is that little self that they have, that little fragile thing that lives inside of them is extremely afraid. They are super fear-based people, and they are afraid of everything. They're afraid of being exposed, number one, more than anything. They're afraid that you're going to leave them. That's also a paradox, because they treat you like terrible and then they don't want you to leave them. Or they're actually extremely codependent. One of their biggest fears, one of their biggest fears is of abandonment, actually. And so the big, big secret is that they are actually more afraid of you than you are of them. They're super afraid of being exposed for the fraud that they are. And they'll go to any lengths to protect that. And so when you're going to negotiate with them, that's what you have to remember. You have to keep all of these things in mind, because you're going to have to kind of keep their ego in check to a certain extent, but then also make them feel like they are potentially going to be exposed, that something might be happening to them. And so when you're building your strategy and you're building your leverage, it's really important to understand and anticipate what it is that they're going to do, what's motivating them, how are they going to behave during the negotiations, because then you can build a strategy and leverage such that you'll be able to motivate them and incentivize them into wanting to have a conversation with you. Don't think they're going to change. Don't think that you're going to be able to get them to see the error of their ways and, oh my gosh, I can't believe how I treated you or how this happened or whatever, because they're not going to do that. And the reason why they have a hard time apologizing, or they have a hard time admitting that they're wrong or that they're responsible or giving anybody credit for anything, is because they have such a fragile sense of self. It's almost like, if I do that, then I will crumble, then there won't be enough for me. They're almost like glass or something that's been very carefully, meticulously protected, and they don't want to be exposed. So that's really the biggest secret of all. And that is that you are actually the stronger one. They are way more afraid of you than you are of them. And there are a lot of ways that you can build a strategy and leverage around that so that you can walk away with getting what you want and they also feel intact. More than anything, you need to feel valued, honored, and respected, and setting yourself up so that no one and nothing can ever infringe on that. Okay, so I help people negotiate with narcissists, and they are the most mean when they have to negotiate, because it is then that the gloves come off, because that's when everything becomes black and white. Because for a narcissist, you are either for them or against them. You're either in their camp or not. They don't see things in gray. You are either part of their world, part of their army, or not. And they are so easily slighted. And when they even hint that there's something in the air, that there's some kind of thing that you might be against them, boy, do they get mean. And so what is that number one emotion that's happening behind that? Why do they get so mean? Especially when you think, wow, I've done so much for you. And I'm telling you, this is in a business setting. This is in a personal setting. This is in a family setting, no matter what it is. And you're over there thinking, how do you not see all the things that I've done for you, the relationship that we've had, and you don't want to have closure. You don't want to maybe have some kind of relationship after this. Why do you want to burn this thing to the ground? Why are you so mean? And by the way, I'm Rebecca Zung. I'm an attorney. I'm a narcissist negotiation expert. I recommend that you go ahead and subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell. I upload brand new videos every single day. I've helped millions and millions of people through this channel and through my books, through my podcast, through my law practice, and I want to help you too. What is that number one emotion that is behind the narcissist's mean streak? Narcissists are driven by a need for attention. They're driven by a need for validation. They are super insecure. They're threatened by people who they perceive to be better than them. This insecurity leads them to put people down. It leads them to do all sorts of things. But what's behind that? What's behind this deep need, right? What's behind that? What's inside? They seek power and they seek control, and people just see all of that. And a lot of people think, wow, they're so confident and they get so far in life. And many people only see that side of them. And they think, wow, this person makes me feel so bad. They make me feel so small. Yeah, they are fueled by this sense of entitlement, and they want to feel special, and they think that they should get this special treatment. And yes, they are extremely manipulative, and they think that they should get what they want all the time. Why do they do these things? What's behind that? And why are they constantly moving the goalposts? And I'm telling you that in negotiations, if you think that all they want to do is win, you are dead wrong. Because that is not all that they want. They don't want to just win. If they just wanted to win, then why is it that when people say, just let me give them everything they want, I'll be out of it? Why are you not out of it? Why is it that they keep moving goalposts? It's because of this thing, right? They also enjoy the process of making you squirm. They also enjoy the process of manipulating you. They get narcissistic supply from that. They enjoy getting supply from that. That feeds them. Everything is driven by supply. Everything is driven by that almighty supply. It's their food, it's their lifeblood, it's their oxygen. They need to feel like they're alive. And that's what drives them. That's what makes them feel alive, right? And so they lie, they cheat, they do all these things to get ahead. And because they don't have any sense of empathy or compassion for others, they don't feel anything when they trample on people, when they step on people. They don't see that wake behind them. They don't see the bloodbath that they're leaving behind them. And they are charismatic and charming, and they can get what they want. And that also makes them very dangerous. So you do need to know signs of narcissism so that you can protect yourself from being taken advantage of. The number one emotion behind all of this is not necessarily what you think. Yes, it's driven by this need for narcissistic supply. Yes, it's driven by this need to feed that beast inside of them that has to feel like they matter deeply, and that's why they can't feel anything about you. It's that black hole inside of them that can never be filled, and you might want to fill it too, but it can never be filled, and that's why you're left totally and completely and utterly depleted. It's a one-way street that it never goes the other direction. But really what it's being driven by is fear. That's the emotion. That's the emotion behind it. It's fear of loss, fear of not being significant, fear of being no one, fear of losing everything, all of it. Fear of not having power, fear of not having attention, fear of not being validated, fear of being exposed. All of it is driven by fear. They're extremely, extremely scared people inside. They've got these two sides to them at all times. There's this inside person and this outside person. And that's what you need to understand. There's two sides to each person, each narcissist. And what happens when you whip off that mask? That's the next video that you need to watch of mine. When you whip off, especially the covert narcissist masks, what happens to them? I mean, they don't know what to do when you expose them. That's the number one emotion that's really behind what's going on, a narcissist's mean streak, especially when they feel threatened. And when you're dealing with them in a negotiation, they are at their absolute worst. But you can't give up and you can't give in, because they're at their worst right before they're ready to give up. And I know it seems hard to believe, but it is the absolute truth. So never give in. And that's what I want you to put in the comments right now. Never give in, because that's when you're about to win. Never give in, never give up. Put never give in the comments right now. Never give in. There's an old story about how this gold miner was just about ready to hit gold, and then he gave up, and then they found out that he gave up, and he was 3 feet from gold, 3 feet from hitting the mother lode of gold. So you don't want to be 3 feet from gold. You don't want to give up. Don't give up. Never give in, because they are afraid. They're way more afraid of you than you are of them. And that's what they don't want you to figure out. One secret tactic that is guaranteed to put a narcissist in their place is narcissistic fluffing. And I know this seems so crazy, but it's bartering to get what you want. I call it fluff for favor, vomit later. So what you do is you ethically manipulate the manipulator. You go up to them and you say, hey, can you do the QuickBooks? You are so much better at it than I am. And so then you get something that you want. They do it. And then, if you need to go vomit or shower later, that's fine. But you got something that you wanted, and it puts them in their place. You got something that you wanted, and they're none the wiser, right? So it's a little secret tactic that's guaranteed to put them in their place. You take your ego out of it. Fluff or favor, vomit later. So that's one secret tactic that's guaranteed to put a narcissist in their place. Another secret tactic to put a narcissist in their place, it's a great way to gather leverage against them, is to keep them talking. They have no idea what you're doing. They love to talk about themselves. They love to tell you all about what's going on. And then you will figure out what's actually motivating them. Remember that what really motivates a narcissist is how they look to the world. What I call diamond level supply. That supply that feeds them, that motivates them, is their ego. So it could be that new girlfriend, or that the employees that they work with, whoever it is that makes them, that beefs up their ego the most in the world. It could be those A-level people that are around them, right? Whoever it is that's motivating, that's driving them, keep them talking, because they will tell you what's motivating them. They cannot help themselves. And that will help you in the long run. Okay? Keep them talking. Find out what's motivating them. That will help you. That will help you put them in their place. Next, the next secret tactic to guarantee to put them in their place is get them to respond to you in writing as much as possible. They always lie. They always contradict themselves. And then that becomes fantastic leverage for you. If you keep track of all of that, then you will be able to put it all together and use that against them as leverage. They will never believe that you actually took the time to put all of that together. Now, remember to use one form of writing as much as possible with them, because if you use text, or if you use all these different forms of email, or all these different forms of other types of writing, they will use all these different ways to make your life miserable. They're DMing you in your Instagram, in all these different forms, and it drives you absolutely crazy. And on top of that, if you end up having to go to trial with them, you're trying to remember, where was that? Where did that come in? Did that come in through my Facebook messaging? Did that come in through my Instagram messaging? Where did that come in from? And you don't want to have to deal with all of that, and you don't want to have to try to remember that. So you want to try to keep your writing in one form as much as possible. And you really should have it be email if possible. Really should be email if possible, because if it's email, then you have a time and date stamp. It's something that's provable, and it's the least likely to be manipulated down the road. When it becomes a trial exhibit, they're much more difficult to be entered into as evidence, because when you go to use them as trial exhibits, They want the entire conversation usually. And so texts are not usually great for trial exhibits. You usually need to have an entire conversation. And that's why email serves as a better form of writing. And I really do recommend that when you're talking to narcissists, because they will lie. They literally will say something and then completely contradict themselves in just one conversation later. They will say, I don't want to have to be in this job anymore, whatever they say. And then 10 minutes later, they'll say, I never said that, as if you are dealing with an insane person. So, as much as possible, you want to have them be in conversation with you in writing. And a lot of this, by the way, is in my Slay program. But one of the ways that you can really start to gather all of this is by using my Crush My Negotiation Prep Worksheet. It's a 15-page ebook, which you can definitely get at winmynegotiation.com and get that free ebook and get started with that. If it's everything all in one place. So go get that to get started. Okay, so number 4 is call them out when things aren't adding up. When they literally just say, I didn't say that, you can just say, but you did. You have the right during conversations to say, I can see that you are saying things to me that aren't truthful, or we can resume this conversation when you're ready to have a conversation with me that is truthful, or something like that. I mean, call them out when things aren't adding up. But, you do need to be careful, because if you are dealing with somebody who is volatile, then you don't want to put yourself in any kind of harm's way. You certainly don't want to do that. Other thing I do want to caution you on with this particular one is that if you are going back to number 3, where you are catching them in lies in their writings and things like that, you don't want to let on that you know what you have. All right. So be careful about that. The next one is act like you don't care. That is guaranteed to put them in their place, because if you don't care, then it just absolutely drives them bonkers. They just can't stand it when you don't care what's going on. Nothing drives a narcissist crazy like your complacency, like your apathy. That's the one thing they want more than anything, is your rise, you to be engaged with them. But if it's sort of like a pushback thing where you're not pushing back, then they don't have anything giving them that supply. If you see the truth in what I'm saying so far, put truth in the comments below, because you know that what I'm saying is the truth. The next secret that's guaranteed to put a narcissist in their place is stop defending yourself. When you defend yourself, you are literally saying to them that there is something there. You're giving credence to their arguments, and you definitely don't want to do that. Never explain, never justify, never overshare, never defend yourself. You can stand in your power. When things are filed, motions are filed, when letters come over, I know that that's your first inclination, is to go, oh my gosh, you want to defend yourself on everything, point by point by point. I know I do too, but do not defend yourself. That's number 6. Another secret tactic that's guaranteed to put a narcissist in their place is to stand your ground when they try to move goalposts. Certainly don't negotiate against yourself. I've seen people do this all the time. Well, they haven't responded. Let me go back and maybe reduce or something. No, stand your ground, especially when they try to move goalposts. You stay firm. Do not allow them to do that. When they move those goalposts around, they are jerking you around and they're getting supply from that, and don't allow them to do that. They're doing that because they want to see that rise from you. Don't allow that. Let it go. The next thing is to create strategy before making your moves. It is so common when you're dealing with a narcissist to feel you're constantly in survival mode, and you just are swinging all the time, and you feel like you're just putting out fires constantly, and you don't have time to sit back and create a vision and to create an action plan. But you need to create that strategy before you make your moves, and then you will be standing in power, and you will actually get to the goal of where you want to go. It will be so much more powerful for you. The next thing is to create invincible leverage. Going back to what I said in number 3, which is where I started to create the foundation for this, is to create an almost like an invisible fence around that narcissist. Once that fence becomes visible, it's almost like turning on the light, and they realize, oh my goodness, I'm cornered. It'll be so much more powerful for you. I'm setting you up for the SLAY methodology here. You see that? Strategy, leverage, anticipating where they're going, being 2 steps ahead of them. And then finally, number 10 is focusing on you being on the offensive, your incredible 100% super powerful mindset. You have to believe that you can win before anybody else can help you. But if you don't believe that you can win, nobody can help you. You have to believe it. And then that's the most powerful secret tactic that's guaranteed to make sure that you are going to be the most powerful person in whatever room that you stand up in. Because let me tell you, there are always going to be narcissists in this world. They will always be toxic no matter where you go. But if you focus on your powerful mindset and how strong you are, that's kryptonite to narcissists, right?
Now, let's go over the 5 questions that narcissists desperately avoid. Desperately avoid. Why do they avoid questions? Well, they avoid questions, these particular questions, because they don't want to be exposed. These are the questions that are exposing that deep shame narcissist, right? Now, let's go over the 5 questions that narcissists desperately avoid. Desperately avoid. Why do they avoid questions? Well, they avoid questions, these particular questions, because they don't want to be exposed. These are the questions that are exposing that deep shame narcissist, right? Now, let's go over the 5 questions that narcissists desperately avoid. Desperately avoid. Why do they avoid questions? Well, they avoid questions, these particular questions, because they don't want to be exposed. These are the questions that are exposing that deep shame narcissist, right? Now, let's go over the 5 questions that narcissists desperately avoid. Desperately avoid. Why do they avoid questions? Well, they avoid questions, these particular questions, because they don't want to be exposed. These are the questions that sometimes they will use these types of things, but only to manipulate situations. And, sometimes their apologies are, what I call faux apologies, which are to manipulate a situation. They might say, I'm sorry that you felt that way. Or they might make it seem like you were the one that caused their problem. I'm sorry that you made me do this thing. They deflect the blame onto somebody else, so they struggle with admitting their mistakes. If they want you to be the villain in their script, you have to be the cause of all of their problems. Or they might use an apology in order to get you back into their wiles or their lair or whatever, but it's always done as a manipulation. I mean, I have a whole video on do narcissists apologize, which you can definitely check that out. When you ask them, can you admit that you are actually wrong? They don't do that because it exposes them. It makes them feel less than. And they already don't feel like they are worthy. So that's number one. Number two is, how do you truly feel about yourself? I mean, they'll say, I feel great. I am amazing. But that's not how they truly feel. They have a very fragile sense of self-esteem. They inflate their sense of self, but their true introspection, deep feelings of self-worth, they're not going to get there. That's why they don't want to go to therapy, or if they do go to therapy, they manipulate the whole situation because they don't want to have introspection. They don't want to go there. They don't want to delve into that. So that's number two. Number three is anything with regard to empathy. A lot of times what narcissists will do is they pretend, they understand and they have been able to see what others do. And so they're able to kind of mirror what it looks like to have empathy sometimes. But if you hang around with a narcissist long enough, you know what true empathy is, and you know what it looks like when somebody is just faking it. Because a lot of times they will forget to remember to have empathy for, they can pretend for a little bit, but then they forget to oh yeah, I was supposed to be, having empathy for this situation. I forgot to, so they don't actually have empathy. So their true feelings, their true intentions, it doesn't, match up with what's, happening. You don't actually feel it. That facade can only last so long. That whole personality thing can only go so far. The fake generosity can only go so far. And so they evade questions when you're asking about them, their actual empathy. It makes them uncomfortable, and they can oftentimes get very defensive about that. The next one is with regard to their true intentions. When you ask them, what are your true intentions? What are your true motivations? Especially when it comes to real feelings, real genuine emotions, deep probing into deep conversations. They don't want to have deep conversations. They don't want to have conversations about, futures, and they want to stay very surface. Anything that's going to be around revealing what their true nature is not something that they want to get involved with. You want to sit down and have a conversation that's going to get behind what's happening behind that mask, behind that facade, what's deep down into that shame world. They don't want to go there. That's probably where they really need to go, because when you can start to excavate for all of us, when we can start to excavate what's happening for all of us, that's when, we all start to heal. I mean, that for all of us, that's when we can start to do our best healing. But that's where they really don't want to go. And then the last one is asking about, do you genuinely care about others? Of course, they prioritize themselves. They're just so self-centered in the truest sense of the word. The way I always liken it is, if somebody has a massive toothache, all they can think about is that toothache. It just hurts so bad. Other people are sort of around, but all they can think about is, I got to get something for this pain. That's how they are. They just prioritize their own needs and feelings and desires above everybody else. And yes, other people are around, but they just can't really see that because they're just dealing with their own needs and feelings, and they're just so strongly needing to feed that. They just can't deal with everybody else's needs, and so they can't truly care about anybody else. So asking them directly about whether or not they truly care about anybody else's true feelings or concern, having concern for others, it makes them uncomfortable. It causes them to deflect, and it can make them extremely hostile sometimes. When you get into these situations with them, they can get actually hostile because they don't want to have these conversations. They will sometimes attack if you push too hard.
Are narcissists stupid or clever? This is a question that was recently posed to me, and I decided to find the answer, and I'm going to give it to you in this video. Hi, I'm Rebecca Zung, and I've been recognized as one of the top 1% of attorneys in the country, and I've also written a couple of best-selling books, Negotiate Like You Matter and Breaking Free, a Step-by-Step Divorce Guide. And I've helped millions of people go from lives of drama, trauma, and chaos and the toxic stew that looks like narcissism. And I've helped them with giving them resources to deliver them into brand new lives and new beginnings and new futures. And that's what I do for you here on this channel. And if that sounds good to you, then go ahead and subscribe and hit that notification bell. And that way you'll get notified when I upload new content or go live or do all the other special things that we have planned for you. So now let's talk about whether narcissists are stupid or clever. It's a very complicated question. And it was actually posed to me during a dinner with some friends, and my friend is a psychologist, and she's worked with a lot of narcissists or people who have, more so people who have been victims or targets of narcissists and had to deal with the trauma of it and try to heal from it. And so it was a question that I decided to sort of research and dig into a little bit because I was kind of curious about the answer myself. So one of the things for sure about narcissists is that they're very, very good at reading people. They are masters at reading people and reading their emotions and reading what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, what they want, what they don't want, because it's really, really critical for them to be able to do that so that they can determine if you are going to be a good source of supply for them. And that narcissistic supply is the most important part of what it is that they're looking for from anybody. Every single person that they look at is going to be viewed in terms of what kind of supply can you give to me? And this includes, you know, their children, unfortunately. I've known a lot of adults of who've been victims of their parents being narcissists, which is no fun, and it's really, really hard to get over. So I just decided I'm going to look into this because I know that they're really, really good at reading people and manipulating people. So one of the things that I learned actually by reading a blog from a narcissist was the reason why, so what she said in this particular blog was the reason why she was really good at reading people was because she had to learn how to read her own parents who were both narcissists. And as a child, 5, 6, 7 years old, is this a good time to talk to them? Is it not? Is this a good time to ask them for something? Is it not? Am I going to get yelled at right now? Am I not? What kind of mood are they in? So they were constantly having to read the situation around them. So I thought that was a really fascinating explanation as to why they're actually very, very good at reading people because, everything that I've learned, everything that I've read, everything that I've studied about narcissism says that it happens sometime in the narcissist childhood. So at some point in their lives, they
didn't get the love or support or care that they needed, and they determined that the world is a bad place, that they had to survive, and the only way that they could do that is through getting the narcissistic supply that they need to feed that ego. And that's just, anything that feeds their ego, and it's a black hole. You make deposits into it, and never comes back out. So, the relationship always feels very unsatisfying with them, because you're really not ever getting your emotional needs met. And that's because they really do not have the ability to meet your emotional needs. They're not even meeting their own. So, you can't get something from someone that they don't even have for themselves. And so that's what's really going on with them, and why they are really, really good at reading people. So I think that they're very masters at manipulating. They're very good at that. And so I think it's more of, and this is just my speculation, I think it's more that they have a skill at manipulating than more so than they're so smart. Now, some of them actually probably have high IQs, some of them don't, but that you can have low or high or middle average IQ narcissist, at any level. But I think that they are certainly masters at manipulating. And that's why I always talk about ethically manipulating the manipulator and creating that leverage and that strategy that you need in order to get what you want out of negotiating with the narcissist. And that's what I teach you how to do. So as far as whether or not they're smart, stupid, clever, whatever, the other thing that is really important to understand about narcissists is they do end up self-destructing. They do oftentimes collapse. And if you want to know more about what a narcissist collapse looks like, it's not pretty. Make sure you check out my video on what happens when a narcissist collapses. And they do end up self-destructing. They do end up, when they start to get desperate, they start doing things that aren't as smart. They start making mistakes. They start, going into their rages and having their, attacking and getting worse. And I often say that they do get worse before they get better. It gets worse when you're dealing with them. And when you're starting to create your strategy and surround them, what I teach you how to do is actually surround them in a silent fashion where they don't even know that it's happening until they kind of wake up and realize that they're surrounded or that they're backed into a corner. So what I teach you how to do is actually do that, surround them so that they feel like they have no other place to go. And you do that by creating a super strong strategy and invincible leverage. So that's what's the most important thing to understand when you're negotiating with them. And if you are so ready to win against the narcissist, give me a win in the comments. So when you're dealing with them, sometimes they just seem dumb because they don't understand how to have compassion for another human being. They're not that great oftentimes at understanding, how to express emotion. I mean, sometimes I look at narcissists and I think, you'd actually be better served if you would at least pretend like you care a little bit, because then the other person feels a little bit heard, a little bit like they are valued, and would be more willing to give in a little bit. But, sometimes they kind of seem dumb when they don't know how to act in an emotional setting. So, you know, they're really, really smart in a lot of ways, and they're really, really smart and cunning and clever at how they are able to get people to do things, and how they're able to control people and get you to believe things. I mean, you know, gaslighting and things like that. And, you know, you're looking at evidence right in front of your face of certain things, and you question it, and you go, well, maybe, you know, maybe they're right. Maybe their explanation is okay. You know, they're very good at manipulating what it is that is being said, heard, or done, and coming up with an immediate explanation for things because they've been doing it for so long. You know, there's a book called Outliers that I read a long time ago by Malcolm Gladwell that talks about how you know, people need 10,000 hours of anything in order to achieve mastery at it. Well, they have way more than 10,000 hours. They've been doing this for years. I mean, since they were children. So they are really good at coming up with a quick explanation about something, or massaging the facts that you kind of go, well, I guess, okay. I mean, you know, the example that comes to my mind is in the movie Dirty John, or that story about the man who was dating this woman, and he was a severely malignant narcissist, and he told her that he was a doctor, and he would wear his scrubs, and he would leave the house and go wherever he would go, and he'd come home and he was wearing the scrubs. And then her daughter found his diploma, and it turned out he was a nurse of some sort, a nurse anesthetist, I think, or something like that. And so when he was confronted with it, he said, well, I am a doctor. I have a doctorate. It's basically a doctor level of education. And so, you know, I guess she didn't really like the explanation, but she kind of bought it, and she went with that. And you know, he knew exactly what he was trying to say that he was, and, you know, but when confronted with it, he had an immediate explanation for it. And I've seen that happen in court sometimes too, you know, where I've had a case where, you know, I was asking the husband on, you know, cross-examination about his bank statements, and, you know, how come you didn't put this bank account on this particular financial affidavit? Oh, I don't have that account anymore, it doesn't exist. And then 10 minutes later, he's referencing that account again, and oh, you know, he's got some explanation for it right away. Well, I forgot about it, or something like that. And you think, well, you just forgot about it from 10 minutes ago. But, you know, and a lot of times they do that kind of thing, and you see people believing them. And it's really, really frustrating sometimes if you feel like the judge is believing them. Like, how come you didn't see that they just lied? Why didn't you just notice that? And those are the kinds of things that can be really frustrating, especially when you're dealing with a narcissist in any kind of a litigation or negotiation situation. And that's why it's really, really important to understand these concepts. If you're trying to negotiate with a narcissist and you don't understand the concepts, or you don't understand how a narcissist thinks, especially in negotiation, then you're going to be dead in the water. Because when it comes time to negotiate with you, or any kind of discard phase when you're saying goodbye, the narcissist feels like they need to destroy you. And if you want to know more about that, check out my video on why the narcissist needs to destroy you to leave you. But that's what happens at the end of the relationship. And so when you're going to negotiate with them, sometimes it feels like they're really, really smart, but oftentimes they're actually really, really dumb too. And so just understanding that and knowing that you're actually the stronger one for sure. You know, I've often said they didn't attach themselves to you because you have so little value. They attached themselves because you have so much value. because they knew they could get a lot of supply out of you. They're not attaching themselves to anybody that they don't think that they can get a good amount of supply from. So, you know, the key here is that you're no longer going to be a source of supply for this narcissist. They're going to have to get it from somewhere. Let them go get it from someone else. It doesn't have to be you. So if you are getting ready to negotiate with a narcissist, make sure to grab my free Crush My Negotiation Prep Worksheet. It's 14 pages, 15 pages. It's an ebook. You can get it at winmynegotiation.com. And also join me in my free private Facebook group. It's called Narcissist Negotiators with Rebecca Zung, and get the support and connection that you need. You'll see right away that you're not the only one. That they're actually, these narcissists are actually pretty simple creatures. They act the same way. It's almost like they've got the same playbook, and you'll end up feeling like you're not so alone in all of this. So if you like this video, give it a like, share it, drop me a comment, and make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Thanks so much for joining me today. I want you to know that today is a perfect day for you to start negotiating your best life. Wherever you are is the jumping off point for starting your new life, and I'm here to help you do that. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video.
Shopify helps millions sell billions around the world through their digital courses, through their digital products, at the touch of a button, on their smartphones, on social media, however they want, including me. At shop.rebeccazung.com, you can access your store from all over the world, just the touch of a button from your smartphones. Start accepting payments. Everything you need to sell online, manage orders, and develop relationships in one place and look fabulous doing it. Shopify is the commerce platform that is revolutionizing millions of businesses worldwide, including my own, at shop.rebeccazung.com. So right now, what you need to do is sign up for a $1 a month trial period at shopify.com/bestlife. All lowercase. Go to shopify.com/bestlife to take your retail business to the next level today. Shopify.com/bestlife.